Go ahead and get started with our meeting today. I'm Dr. Bruce Witcher, currently board president. Welcome to the Dental Board of California quarterly meeting. Today is Friday, November 3rd, 2017. I want to ask all of us to please turn our cell phones to silent and make sure they're off the table so we can avoid feedback. You may notice board members accessing their laptops during the meeting. They are using laptops solely to access board meeting materials that are in electronic format. This is an official business meeting of the Dental Board of California. The board welcomes public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the board's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any item. If for some reason I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item and you wish to speak, please raise your hand and you will be recognized. Depending on the number of people who would like to testify, a time limit may be imposed, and we ask all speakers to please stay on topic, and if a time limit is necessary, keep your comments to within that time limit. With that, I would like to call the meeting to order, and Yvette, would you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Calling the roll. Burton? Here. Chan?
Here.
Chappelle here. Forsythe? Here. Lai? Lay? Here. McKenzie? Here. Medina? Here. Mara?
Here.
Stewart?
Here.
Witcher?
Here.
Mr. President, we have quorum.
Thank you. With that, I would like to introduce a couple of special guests with us here from the department. We have with us Director Dean Grafilio. He was appointed in February, and he comes to us with substantial experience in state government. Prior to his appointment, he was Chief of Staff at Assemblymember Ralph Bonta's office, where he had been since 2012. He was Associate Director of Government Relations at California Medical Association from 2009 to 2012, so he has healthcare experience. And he was Chief of Staff for Orrin Frutarani from 2008 and 9, and a Senior Legislative Assistant in State Assembly Member Torrico's office. He's here from Seattle originally, having received his Masters of Public Administration from U of W, so I'm pleased to say he's a Husky. We have some Huskies in the family. And then with him is Assistant Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Services, Patrick Way. And welcome, Patrick. Good to see you too. And he's he's been Assistant Chief of External Affairs at Covered California. So again, more healing arts experience. He was a legislative aide for Assembly Rules Committee from 2013 to 2014, and a Capital Fellow with California State Assembly in 2012 and 13, and is Vice President of the Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Association. And so, welcome him here. And I believe you had a few comments, did you? Or, yeah.
President Witcher, thank you for that very kind introduction. Good morning, Dental Board of California. Thank you, Vice President Stewart, Executive Officer Fisher, Assistant Executive Officer Wallace. So glad to finally address you. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, yes, while my appointment did happen in March, it's obviously taken me a couple of months to get to the Dental Board of California. As you folks very well know, the breadth and depth of DCA is quite broad, and so apologize for not getting here sooner. But I figured it's probably timely that I did get here this week, considering I did do my 6-month checkup with Dr. Casagrande just yesterday. So I know you folks know him very, very well. Dr. Steve says hi. He was hurrying to get to Pismo Beach, and so Dr. Michael took great care of me as well. And I think everyone in this room would agree that if folks licensees like the Casagrandes are exemplary, and consumers are in fact going to be protected so much when folks like the Casagrandes are champions for the industry. And so I look forward to working with the dental board, and obviously similar but different role towards protecting consumers during my tenure. With that, I'll start with the department report. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide updates from DCA. I'd like to report there's been some staffing changes at the department. As you folks may well know, Ms. Christine Lawley, who previously served as the department's Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, has joined the Medical Board of California as its Deputy Director. While we are sad to see Ms. Lawley go, we know she will do great things at the Medical Board, and we wish her the best in her new position. In addition, the department is welcoming a new Chief Deputy Director, Chris Schultz, and a new Deputy Director of Administration, Natalie Daniels. Chris Schultz recently started, and Natalie Daniels starts on Tuesday. Before coming to DCA, Mr. Schultz was Deputy Commissioner of Community Programs and Policy Initiatives at the California Department of Insurance since 2011. Ms. Daniels has been a fiscal supervisor at the Judicial Council of California since 2015, and she'll be starting with the department on this, like I said, on Tuesday. She will be overseeing the department's Office of Human Resources, Business Services, and Fiscal Operations. Also want to report that the department has reallocated available resources from this fiscal year's budget to increase staffing at the Board and Bureau Services. These new resources will expand the services that we are able to provide, including assistance on and across all licensing and enforcement issues, facilitating intergovernment communication, providing board member and executive officer administrative and technical support, and executing the department's strategic plan. To that end, I'm excited to announce that Board and Bureau Services is welcoming a new Deputy Director, Chris Castrillo. Mr. Castrillo worked as a legislative advocate where he covered a variety of policy areas including labor, higher education, youth mental health, foster care, healthcare, and local government. He has also worked on candidate initiative campaigns in both California and Oregon. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention he's an Oregon Duck, given there's a lot of University of Washington Huskies here. Joining Mr. Castrillo's team is Board and Bureau Relations, our two Assistant Deputy Directors. Previously introduced Mr. Patrick Lay, who will be addressing the board momentarily, and Karen Nelson. Ms. Nelson has been Chief Operation Officers at the American Leadership Forum Mountain Valley Chapter since 2014. I'm delighted to welcome our newest team members, and I'm confident that these staff additions will strengthen our ability to pursue the department's mission and the services we provide to boards and bureaus. I hope you can join me in providing them with a warm welcome when in fact you do come across them again. Mr. Lay is here today, and I'd like to give him the mic momentarily.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to let me introduce myself. As mentioned, my name is Patrick Lee. I'm one of two new Assistant Deputy Directors for Board and Bureau Services, and it's such an honor to join the DCA family. A little bit about myself. As mentioned, prior to joining DCA, I was the Assistant Chief of External Affairs for Covered California, the State Health Benefit Exchange, where I assisted in implementing the Affordable Care Act. I served in the exchange in a variety of roles, mostly stakeholder relations and government relations. And prior to that, I was with the California State Assembly. I would be remiss not to shout out and mention my colleague, Karen Nelson, the other Assistant Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Services. And while she was not able to join us this morning, both of us are just incredibly excited to join Director Garfilo, Chief Deputy Schultz, and Deputy Director Castrillo in helping shape the Office of Board and Bureau Relations and really serve the mission of the department. So again, very much looking forward to be working with you. And if there's anything that you need, please feel free to reach out at any time. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Dean. Thank you so much.
Just continuing with the update specific to a recent directors meeting. In September, the department held the second directors quarterly meeting with board and executive officers. These quarterly meetings are an opportunity to ensure that the department continues an open dialogue with its boards and bureaus. To that end, we will still be holding an annual meeting with all board presidents to ensure that I'm available to you and that I can hear feedback from board leadership on important issues facing the department and its boards and bureaus. The DCA new online search. One of the important items announced at the meeting that I would like to share with you is that the DCA released a new online license verification search for all boards and bureaus using the Breeze platform. The license search will expand current functionality and allow the public to conduct more flexible inquiries. For example, the new search allows inline filtering on a range of relevant data points, including primary and secondary status, city, county, and license type. A key focus when designing the new online search was to ensure better performance, flow, and ease for consumers. This new DCA search brings our offering closer to the familiar search capabilities common across the internet, allowing our stakeholders to access the important data they require at their fingerprints. The DCA leadership training. The department officially launched its new Future Leadership Development Program in May of this year and held the kickoff meeting with program participants and mentors in August. The last meeting of the Future Leadership Development participants was this Tuesday, October 24th, with Senator Hill. Expanding upon the department's current Leadership Academy training, the department is looking to help develop the best and brightest among the department and its boards and bureaus into its future leaders. The program includes executive mentoring, customized leadership training, and project management. DCA Pro Rata. The department has established a Pro Rata work group of DCA and board execs to discuss potential improvements in how DCA communicates with boards on this issue. Pro Rata is the process by which the department distributes the costs among its boards and bureaus to cover all departmental services, such as information technology, legal, and publication services. The work group held its first meeting in August 2017 and its second this past Tuesday. The department will be hosting a Pro Rata open house meeting on November 14th, which we hope you'll be able to participate in. The DCA strategic plan. In July, the department released its new strategic plan. Like the board's strategic plan, the department's executive team developed it with the assistance of Solid, and it outlines DCA's goals and objectives for the next 4 years. The plan is available on the publications page on the DCA website. There's a reminder here about required board member training. The final board member orientation training in 2017 is scheduled for November 15th. There is still room in this class if you need to register. Board members are required to complete this training within 1 year of appointment and reappointment to a board. This one-day training in Sacramento, which details the important functions and responsibilities of board members. Please contact DCA Solid team if you're interested in attending, or board members can register online. And finally, a reminder that 2017 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year for the department. This means all employees and board members are required to complete this training in 2017, even if it was completed last year. This training is online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience. If you have questions on this or any other required trainings during your tenure as a board member, please contact Board and Bureau Services for assistance. I'd like to make sure that you all know that the department is committed to serving its boards and bureaus. Much of the consumer protection value provided through the department comes from the boards, like the Dental Board. We always protect consumers better when we are working strongly together. As always, if the department can be a service to the board, please let us know. Thank you for your diligent work and valued partnership. I can't emphasize the closing enough. I was able to have a couple great conversations this morning, and I sincerely and genuinely am putting my best foot forward towards strengthening the relationship between DCA and this board, and I look forward to that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, I'll turn the program back over to you. Thank you very much, Director Fia.
Good morning. My name is Karen Fisher, and I'm the Executive Officer of the Dental Board of California. I'm a UC Davis Aggie and a Sac State Hornet. I did my undergrad at UC Davis, got my master's at Sac State. So we don't mention Ducks or Washington. I'm going to start with a staffing update. If you'd just like to follow along, I'll just briefly hit on some points. Our administrative unit is fully staffed at this time. That means we have our budget analyst, we have our ledgerage analyst, we have our executive assistant, we have our personnel analyst. So that part of the organization is running smoothly. Everybody's up to date. There are no backlogs. We do have 4 vacancies currently in the dental assisting program. I think Sarah briefly mentioned yesterday that we have moved forward with a limited term manager that we're going to be hiring to oversee the dental assisting program, to give Sarah a little relief at this point to be focusing on other parts of administration of the internal workings of the dental board. So we're in the process of doing interviews for that. We'll be hiring for that soon. As you can see, we've had some people move on in the dental assisting unit, as is normal, and we've had people actually who've been promoted within our organization moving into another unit, so we still have the opportunity to utilize them while we're recruiting and training other people. Our enforcement division, the complaint and compliance unit, where the complaints first start, is fully staffed now, and we're hoping through overtime that we have the ability to get caught up on processing some of those complaints. The investigative analysis unit also is fully staffed. There's only 1 vacancy in the Sacramento field office, and that person is in backgrounds. We're expecting that should be wrapped up, and he'll be starting soon. We do have 2 vacancies in the Orange office. One of our special investigators went to another agency, so we're recruiting for a special investigator position. And then we have had a sworn position that has been available, and we do have candidates in backgrounds for that. Wanted to let folks know that there will be 2 board members who are starting their grace period starting January 1st. That's Dr. Morrow and Kathleen King. Both are eligible for reappointment for another term because their first terms were not 4 years. So oftentimes board members can serve actually more than 8 years because the statute says that they can serve 2 full 4-year terms. Dr. Morrow's first term was less than 4 years, so he has the potential now of serving beyond 8 years. And he has expressed an interest in doing so. So for that, we are grateful. Kathleen King, I think, will be happy to serve out her grace period, but she's finding that her foundation work is taking more and more of her time. So it's likely that she will not put her name in the running to be reappointed, but will continue to serve until she is replaced. At this time, I'd like to recognize a board member whose board meeting, this will be her last. And our beloved Judy Forsyth is going off the board. She's been the RDA on the board, I'd say forever. I don't think she looks a day over 19, but she's been with us a long time. And Judy, it's been awesome. You have been awesome. I mean, it's been great. If you come over here, we just have a little certificate to give you. So it says, in recognition of your leadership and service as the registered dental assistant member of the Dental Board of California, your contributions to the profession of dentistry, and your commitment to protecting the public safety on behalf of the state of California dental healthcare consumers. Judy has expressed an interest to continue to work with the board in any capacity, and we will probably be looking forward to utilizing her as a subject matter expert in many ways. So we'll be moving forward with that. At this time, we'd also like to recognize our outgoing president, Dr. Bruce Witcher. This is Dr. Bruce Witcher's second time around as board president, and we wanted to give, the board typically gives him a little gift, And it's hard to keep track after they've served presidencies for a couple of times what we gave him last time, so we don't give him the same thing. So I think last time you got a gavel. Okay. Okay. So this time the board wants to extend their gratitude to you for your service this last year. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'll move on to the next item on my report here. Director Garfillo already put down the gauntlet, I'll say, about the sexual harassment prevention training. I've reminded you every meeting since the beginning of the year, and I think we have only three people who have completed it, and you all know who you are. If the rest of you could, try to get it done before December 1st when the holidays start to hit. We really want to be in compliance by the end of the year. It's going to take you 2 hours. Pour yourself a little Chardonnay or Merlot. Sit down at the computer. I mean, we've come a long way. Dr. Witcher will tell you in the past, you had to get online during a certain period of time and take a webinar. Oftentimes you got booted off of it. I begged and begged for the opportunity for board members to be able to take it on their own time, at home, in the comfort of their own home, and we've got it now. So let's make good use of that opportunity to get this training done and try to get it done as quickly as possible. Send your certificates to Jerry. She's tracking everything, and we will send out our gentle reminders. After December 1st, they're not going to be so gentle. So we'll send out our gentle reminders to you all so that you can complete that. And there's no getting around it. It's 2 hours. Just try to make the best of it, especially under what's in the media now. I think that it's really important that we go ahead and take this training.
Could I just add something?
Sure.
Yeah, I just completed the training, and what I would say is read the instructions about setting cookies in your browser. Otherwise, you get to do it in 4 hours.
Oh, okay. Okay, the next item on my report is regarding the status of the occupational analysis for dentists and essentially the implementation of AB 2331 relating to ADEX. So the workshops for the occupational analysis are scheduled and will be taking place in December. OPES is in charge of that and is taking care of everything. Essentially that they have contacted about 10 dentists. They look for people who've had a range of experience, but they're primarily looking at people who've had experience from 0 to 5 years, and they participate in these workshops so that OPES can get an idea about the occupational analysis for dentistry. So we're looking forward to those results. ADEX did agree that they are paying for this, so the board incurs the expense. We'll go ahead and collect the money back from ADEX in periodic payments. Also, after the occupational analysis is completed, which we expect will be sometime perhaps mid-2018, then they will start the psychometric analysis of the ADEX exam. So you'll be hearing more about this as we go into 2018. There is an update regarding the status of the 2-year provisional approval of the school in Moldova. They did submit documents in order to address the deficiency. There's one deficiency left. Those documents are currently with the site evaluation team, and at some point the evaluation team will bring back a recommendation to the board. The school in Moldova has a 2-year provisional approval, which will expire at the end of next year, so there's still plenty of time. Dr. Mora, did you want to add a comment about where we are in the process?
Yes, we have been in communication with the other two members of the site visit team, Dr. Martinez and Dr. Plesh, and the packet of information that we recently received is being considered and reviewed by the three site members independently, and then we will have a teleconference meeting to discuss our findings and our recommendations. That should be available by the first board meeting in 2018.
The last item on my report is essentially the update regarding AB 2235. We got the authority to hire an analyst who will be working with the issues surrounding pediatric anesthesia and anesthesia in general. And we're in the process of recruiting and hiring for that position. Hopefully by the beginning of the year, we'll be up and running, and then we'll start to develop the data that will be necessary, that we'll be presenting in Sunset Review. Want to remind everybody the board meeting in February will be, we think, in San Diego at the Embassy Suites in La Jolla. It's good? Awesome. Okay, we got it then. We're going to the Embassy Suites in La Jolla, and that's at the end of February. Lastly, I would be hugely remiss if I didn't thank my staff for their wonderful service and support of me in the last 6 months. The management team of Sarah and Carlos and our line managers has been awesome. I hope that in my absence you haven't seen really anything fall through the cracks. Sarah has been a huge support, not only professionally but personally, and I have to share a little story. So after Jim passed away, well, before he passed away, and for years he's been saying, Karen, you need to know the finances. You need to get on the computer, you need to know where everything is. And I was, yeah, right, whatever. So he went out and he bought this fancy Apple, and I'm seeing some of you in the office, laptop computer. So I sat down with him, got all the passwords to all these accounts. Passwords are a nightmare. And so I'm writing everything down, and he passes away suddenly. I can't get into the computer. He didn't tell me the password to sign on. I am hysterical. And Sarah says, I got this. She comes over, she hacks into my computer. No kidding. It took her 30 minutes. We looked at each other with such surprise when she finally got the password. We almost jumped up and body slammed each other. And then she said, darn it, Jim is looking down saying, Sarah, what took you so long? I thought you'd do it in 20 minutes. It took you 30 minutes. So God bless you, Sarah. I mean, you have been awesome there, not only for me professionally, but personally. And thanks to all of you who have lifted me up with your prayers, your love, your support. It has helped. It's been a difficult time, but with you, we'll all get through it. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And again, our appreciation as board members to staff too. It really has been seamless, I would have to say. And that doesn't happen easily. Very good. I think we now have our representatives from the Hygiene Committee. Tony, welcome. And we'll be seeing you soon, a couple of weeks.
Good morning, Mr. President, board members, and Karen. My apologies go out because Noelle Kelch, my president, was going to be here, but her commute this morning, she was trying to get here and left her place around Santa Cruz at like 5:30 this morning, but got stuck on Highway 17 with 4 accidents in front of her. So with that, I just informed her, just turn around, I'll give the report, no problem. So she apologizes for not being here today. The first item that I have is our committee is eyeballs deep in Sunset Review, which you guys will be going through next year. Hasn't been a fun process because to start it off, we got the questions really late. But it's something that we've been working through, and we've been putting in long hours, and I give a lot of credit to my staff to give me accurate data to be put into the report. Hopefully we're about 95% complete. We should be able to finish up that last 5% with just some minor data revisions. And our committee will be meeting in about 2 weeks to finalize the report, and hopefully it'll be done by December 1st to submit it to the legislature. And then I would love to just kiss that goodbye for a while. The second thing is in regards to our executive officer recruitment. We have been actively recruiting for our executive officer, and fortunately I am one of the candidates, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But my president wants to extend a sincere thank you to Fran Burton for assisting my president with creating the questions for the interviews and making herself available to do so. And she says thank you very much. My next issue is we've been instituting an educational program, a dental hygiene educational program review process in the last couple of years. And some of our schools have been very good at complying with the law. Others have some issues, and we're addressing those as we go along. We figured there was going to be some major hurdles in the road because these schools have not had any oversight for decades, if at all. So my projection is probably to get everybody on board to review all of the programs, and it'll probably take a few years to get everybody on board and complying with the law. It is what it is, and every day is a new discovery, and new issues arise all the time. So we're continually working on that to make sure that our schools are in compliance. The last thing that I have is to thank Karen and Sarah for working, and staff for working with us so closely and so openly, especially with the mobile dental clinic regulation. I've received, since the language was presented at your last meeting, I've received quite a few concerning phone calls from interested stakeholders. And so we've met a few times since that time on the issue, and they've been very open to work with the Dental Hygiene Committee. And I want to send my thank yous for that. And that concludes my report for today.
Thank you, Tony. I know Fran and I served on the Executive Officer Search Committee for
Oh, did
the
you?
board.
Okay,
So
thank you too, Dr.
she
Witcher.
has a lot of good
Thank you.
experience. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
Very good.
thank you.
Okay, next, moving on. LCP, review of dental licensure and permit statistics. Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah Wallace, Assistant Executive Officer. This is typically a standard agenda item that we've included in the board meeting materials with an overview of our dental licensure and permit statistics. As you can see, we've hit our peak during the year, graduation in May and June, and so we're on the slower end of the year right now for the receipt and approval of applications for dental licensure. We have included a breakdown of dentists by population broken out by county, and as was mentioned in the joint meeting yesterday, we will be looking at trying to put a table together that indicates the ratio of per dentist to dental auxiliary to county population in the future. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
There's no questions. We'll move ahead with examinations.
I just had one quick update I wanted to provide to the board. Yesterday afternoon, late in the afternoon, I was made aware that with our recent fee increase, we had the renewal notices were mailed out for the January 31st renewal. Those went out at the end of October. Staff were made aware that there was an inaccuracy on some of those renewal notices relating to the delinquency fee. And so this morning we're working closely with our Breeze team and the department to rectify that situation. So there will be new corrected renewal notices being mailed out. However, in the event any of you receive any questions or concerns from stakeholders, please feel free to direct them to me and CDA as well. Please forward them directly to me.
Okay, that brings us to our update on portfolio.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Yoon. I'm a licensing analyst with the Dental Board of California and currently also serve as the portfolio contact for the Dental Board. So the memo in front of you is the Portfolio Pathway to Licensure update. And this was created because from the last board meeting, I think you saw from the data that we prepared for you that the number of applicants who applied for a dental license through the Portfolio Pathway to Licensure has declined. And so naturally the question occurred, well, why? Why is that the case? What are the reasons for the decline? Is the dental school not implementing this portfolio process correctly? Or is there some issues? Is the dental board not doing enough? Is there a problem with the curriculum? So shortly after the last board meeting, it was decided that a small team comprised of dental board staff and 2 dental school experts would go and visit each of the 6 California dental schools to see how they were doing with the portfolio pathway. And this was done during the week of October 9th. All 6 dental schools were visited during this week, so as you can imagine, it was a very busy week. The small team included myself, along with the licensing manager, Mr. Bernal Vava, as well as a fellow licensing analyst, Ms. Melissa Brocken, and also Ms. Tina Valerie, who served as the previous portfolio contact for the dental board. And the 2 dental experts that were included in these meetings were Dr. Lay and Dr. Morrow from the board. And so on October 9th, we started by visiting Northern California dental schools with Dr. Lay. We met with UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, and University of the Pacific. And then on the 11th, we met with UCLA and USC with Dr. Morrow as our dental expert. And then we concluded that visit on the 12th by visiting Loma Linda University and Western University of Health Sciences with Dr. Lay. And so again, the purpose of these visits were to determine the challenges of implementation to the portfolio pathway to licensure for these 6 dental schools. We wanted to hear any feedback, including issues, possible challenges, and even suggestions that they might have with the portfolio. And also to solicit input from the dental schools to determine how we can increase participation down this pathway. Any ideas that could help encourage a dental school, just giving them a nudge to go down this pathway. We wanted to hear everything. So as you can see in the memo, we went to each of the dental schools and they gave very detailed explanations as to specific issues and challenges that they were facing. And so we prepared that for you. But at the very end of the memo, we kind of generalized it and got an idea of the generality of the issues that were involved. So I just want to go down briefly. It was kind of summed up into 5 of these bullet points. And the number one issue that a lot of these dental schools are facing was the portability issue. Even if a student was going to stay in California, they just wanted that extra option, a little fallback, so to speak, in their back pocket that other states would accept this portfolio pathway. And for some schools, they noted that a majority of the students were out of state and they didn't have any plans to stay in California, so that was another issue. A second bullet point was paperwork. It costs a lot of money to print paper. A lot of the schools noted that it was very cumbersome. The rubrics were long. For example, it was hard to keep it organized as well. One year, a school had 19 applicants who applied through the portfolio pathway. So you can imagine they had to prepare the portfolio, then they had to make copies of all these portfolios, then they had to make sure all the numbers were inputted and added correctly, and then they had to send all these the copy of the portfolios to the dental board for review. And so one doctor there noted that it was an administrative nightmare. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of challenges. The third bullet point was the costs to these dental schools. It took a lot of time and money for faculty. Talked about the cost of paper. Each component of the portfolio had an associated cost as it was designed, and the cost would be fully borne by the school. That was a concern that was expressed to us. A lot of time, money, and resources were wasted if a student went halfway down the portfolio process, but then for whatever reason they decided to drop out. And that kind of leads into the fourth bullet point, talking about there's no incentives or consequences for those who start the portfolio process. We know that there's an incentive that as soon as they graduate, they'll be able to receive their dental license. But other than that, there aren't really any other incentives that go along with it. And then on the flip side, there weren't any consequences for any of the dental students who started down the portfolio pathway either. So some schools thought about maybe even charging a fee for those who wanted to start down the portfolio pathway just so that they can stick to it. But again, this was another issue that they was concerned. And then lastly, the competency exams. For instance, patient criteria. Schools expressed to us that there are patient limitations or finding specific patients for certain criteria for competency exams was very difficult for the students. It was too long and difficult for faculty and students, meaning they just want to see this whole portfolio process simplified. They would like to see it a little bit easier. One dental school noted that if the goal of this program was to have, let's say, a class of 100 dental school students graduate and half of them apply through the portfolio pathway, well, as it currently stands now, it would be nearly impossible to accommodate 50 dental school students down the portfolio pathway. So they would just like to see this whole process reevaluated and simplified as well. And then another common thing that was said was 2 examiners. They would like to see 1 examiners for the competency exams. So based off these conversations, the staff has created some short-term goals, as well as some short-term goals that we're going to work on, and then also some long-term goals that they would like the board to consider. So in conclusion, we want to thank each of the dental schools that took the time to meet with us and for their honest feedback. We really appreciated that. We found that every dental school in California is very supportive of the portfolio pathway. They really like the idea, they really like the concept of the portfolio. So even though there are some adjustments that may need to be made, they would definitely love to see this portfolio pathway be successful.
Thank you. That's extremely informative and great job on the report. I know that portability has, a high level of concern, and I think, we need to look at where we are with all the different states. Dr. Lane, Dr. Morrow, did you have anything you'd like to add? Or?
Yes, yeah. So first of all, I would like to thank the staff, for taking on this very important, project. As you know, we rolled out the portfolio a few years ago. We sort of like midterm, until our audit, in 2020. So I thought this would be a very good time for us to reassess, the pathway. So I'm glad that we were able to visit all the 6 dental schools, and thank you to Dr. Morrow for making to the 2 schools that I couldn't attend. So anyway, as you can see, portability was probably the main reason, for students not participating in this pathway. We do have 3 states, that are accepting portfolio at this time, and those are Iowa, Colorado, and Kentucky. So I think that we still have a lot more work to do to try to get other states to see that this is probably the most, probably the best way to assess the competency of new graduates. Having said that, it's the long road. It's going to take us some time to get there. There are some short-term, things that we can do, and I think the staff is committed to making some of those, short-term objectives, and that would include some of the things that Daniel mentioned, such as clarification of the language on a patient case selection. There seems to be some confusion among the schools, of which patients can be used for what. There are also some internal adjustments that the schools could also make themselves. At this point in time, 5 of the dental schools are actually using their specialists, the specialty faculty to grade the specialty sections. In their opinion, perio, endo, pros are specialty sections, and therefore only specialists can grade those sections. That really creates a huge hurdle for the candidates to schedule the exams because there are not enough specialists that are calibrated for the exams. For example, USSF has only 4 endo examiners that are calibrated to grade the portfolio. So with their daily work, with their other responsibilities, it's very difficult for them to schedule the endo section. Other schools do the same thing. The only school that does not use specialists as examiners is Western University. But then at the same time, they're just starting this year. So that's, so we were encouraging the schools to rethink that process, and that is to allow general dentists to be calibrated grading examiners for those sections, because after all, portfolio is really an exam to assess the minimal competency, for these dental students to receive their initial license. One of the examples that I did bring up at these discussions was the fact that regional exams actually use, all the dentists, like even specialists, to grade all sections of the exams. And if we, and those regional exams are acceptable, in our eye, then why would we not be able to use, the general practitioners as grading examiners? So, so there's some there's some things that we can do as the board, but there are also things that the schools can also do themselves in order to facilitate, the portfolio examination. I think another major thing that came out of all these discussions is the lack of case selection. The reason we came up with portfolio was that we didn't want the students to save those perfect lesions for the live patient exams. Well, we're finding out that they are doing it, which is unfortunate because the schools are requiring the students to go through competency exam, the CE, as part of their requirements. They have to also go through mock boards as preparation for their regional exams. And then now they have to go through portfolio exam. Now, they're going through 3 exams to be assessed for competency in one section: operative, perio, endo. So now you're looking at so many perfect lesions that have to wait for the exams. And I think that creates another hurdle, for the students because they don't have those perfect lesions. And if you're looking at 100 students or 120, whatever size the class is, and if you want all of them to take portfolio, now you're looking at just multiply 3 by that number. How are you going to find the perfect lesions, for these exams? So I found that to be very challenging, and I can understand why the students choose not to go with portfolio, besides the fact of, besides other factors. And also there's this interpretation among the schools that if a patient has been used for one portfolio section, that patient cannot be used for other sections. Such as if the patient has been used for oral diagnosis and treatment planning, they cannot be used for perio section. Again, that's just the interpretation, so they want some clarification in the language from us. So I think those are some of the things that we can provide, much more expedited, manner. There are other things that will probably require regulatory changes, and the schools do understand that those that require regulatory changes will take a lot longer. But I think there are a few things that we can do, the board staff can do in order to help the schools to understand how they can roll this out in a much more painless manner, I guess. So I think those are some of the things that I could recall from our field trips. Dr. Morrow was at the other two schools, USC and UCLA, so he probably has a few more things to add.
Thanks, Hong. I also want to thank the dental board and also the staff for taking the effort and expending the energy that it took to travel around the state and visit 6 dental schools. That was quite an experience, I'm sure, because even though we have 6 dental schools, each one of them has their own unique characteristics and their own unique personalities. Having been in dental education for many years, and also being involved with the development, the concept, the development and the implementation of the portfolio curriculum integrated examination for licensure, I have a viewpoint on this whole examination that most all of my faculty member colleagues do not have. And I guess to put it simply, and I've told them, you're making this much more difficult than it needs to be. And a lot of that is their lack of understanding of what the goal is or what the objectives are and were and are for that the dental board had in establishing this format of licensure examination. And as Dr. Lay mentioned, there's a number of ways that they are making this examination more difficult than it needs to be. So to that end, one of my recommendations to the board is that I think it would be beneficial for us to have a sit-down face-to-face meeting with at least one, if not more, representatives from each one of the dental schools and have an understanding with them as to what is expected out of the schools in the implementation of this examination. You know, our concept at the beginning was obviously this examination was developed by representatives from each of the 6 dental schools. The dental board did not design or implement this examination process. It did not develop the rubrics. The rubrics were developed, the assessment rubrics were developed by representatives from each one of the 6 dental schools. Now they're complaining that the rubrics are too complex, they're too long. Wait a minute, you did those yourself, okay? Under the supervision of and the guidance with our psychometric consultants. So we need to get our heads together with the schools and come to a better understanding of where we're going with this process. Secondly, dental students at the present time are uniquely different than those of us sitting around this dais when we went to dental school, okay? They're millennials. They have their own way of thinking. They have their own way of doing. They have their own sources of information. They don't trust anything that they didn't get off the internet. I don't trust anything that I get on the internet. So we have a different way of communicating. The students are relying upon the faculty and the administration at the dental schools to tell them about the portfolio examination because they don't have it from any other source. We do not have a link on our website to information regarding the portfolio examination. At least the last time I looked on it, I did not find one. But I'm not a millennial and I don't spend my life looking at the internet. But we did have a link for licensure by credentialing. I think we had a link for licensure by residency, but I could not find a link to licensure by portfolio. This is an ideal opportunity, I think, for us to disseminate that information to these people that we are wanting to and hoping will take advantage of this licensing process, where we could have the candidate's manual available to them. Reb, you go to Reb's website and they've got the candidate manual right there. And students can look at it, they can print it off if they want to. All kinds of questions and most frequently asked questions about the REB examination are available to all of the students in the dental schools. But the portfolio of information that they obtain is dependent upon them getting them from the faculty and the staff at their school. So we need to be more proactive in getting this information out ourselves. And another thing that I again, the major thing is that the schools are looking at this examination as a totally separate experience from their curriculum. And the concept of it is that it was curriculum integrated. And I know the Commission on Dental Accreditation requires assessment of competency for our graduates. When the schools are site visited by the Commission every 7 years, and we have to do a self-study report, they ask us, require that we provide them documentation that our students have been assessed as competent in those competencies that the individual school has set that their students will graduate with. That's nothing new. So therefore, all the schools are used to doing that. But they're looking at it as a separate examination like REB rather than part of the student's curriculum, built in. So yes, schools require that students to graduate have to demonstrate competency in direct restorations, amalgams, composite resins. That same competency for graduation can also be the portfolio competency, but they're looking at it as a separate standalone examination. So we need to help them in that respect. So I won't labor that any longer. Another thing that I would just like to say is right now, there is a heated discussion, national as well as involving Canada, regarding clinical examinations for licensure in the United States and in Canada. Long-standing patient-based, and I hate when they use this, but they refer to it as a live patient-based examination. Well, let's hope the patient is alive and that they stay alive during the process of the examination. But there's been a long controversy and discussion regarding this. This is one of the ethical situations and dilemmas involved in a patient-based type of an examination are many. And that was one of the major motivating factors that led us to develop the competency process through portfolio, was that it was a patient of record of the students. They're familiar with that patient. They didn't buy that patient. They didn't have to go out on the market and buy a patient in order to take this examination. And when we implemented that process, it started a national debate. And I'm glad it did, because it needed to be started. It needed to be dealt with. At the present time, Canada has led us and is ahead of us in this respect. They have implemented now what is called an Objective Structured Clinical Examination, acronym of OSCE. That is accepted by all of the provinces in Canada. It is a single examination, does not involve procedures on a patient, and all of the provinces have their own additional requirements for licensure in their province, but that OSCE examination is universally accepted by all provinces as the clinical licensing exam. A few of the states that border Canada have accepted that examination as licensure in their states. Minnesota is one of them. The American Dental Association has made a resolution, their board of directors, to proceed in developing an OSCE type examination, clinical licensing examination, to be utilized in the United States. The American Dental Education Association, ADEA, has passed a resolution to move forward with the development of a portfolio type examination to be used in the dental schools in the United States that is patterned after California's portfolio examination. So we have started a debate which I think was long-term overdue from the standpoint of how we license dentists in the United States. In some ways, we are way back in the dark ages. And I think this whole portfolio process was started by Dr. Degoni, Arthur Degoni, who many of you know. And Dr. Degoni's concept was, if all the dental schools in the United States are accredited by the Commission on Dental Accreditation, and they all have uniform standards of education that they need to meet, and the Commission has approved those schools as meeting those standards, why do individuals then have to separately examine those graduates to say, we agree with the Commission, you graduated a decent individual? There's no evidence to support that anybody that wants to get a license after graduating from a dental school in the United States can get one, gets one. The examination doesn't stop anybody from getting a license. And it is fraught with ethical issues that are long overdue to deal with. So I'm glad that California, again, has led the nation in an issue that is important, that needs to be developed and needs to be carried through with. So I think we need to be proud of it and not feel like that we are struggling with the portfolio process. We have to do a better job of understanding, of getting our institutions that are implementing this examination to understand, and to get the students that are involved in these institutions to understand better the process that we have put forth for them.
Okay, so I just want to add a few more things. Thank you, Dr. Morrow, for that report. When again, the reason that we're doing this is because we want to understand the challenges, or even the successes, from the schools that have implemented the portfolio. We did hear some success stories, and we did hear quite a few challenges, and we did have some recommendations to the schools on a few things, such as calibration of examiners, the selection of examiners, and those are some of the internal adjustments that schools could make. When we asked the schools what the dental board could do to help, with the process, I think Daniel has included, some of those, recommendations from the schools, or it's like requests from the schools, really. And one of them is digitizing, the paperwork, because as you know, all the schools are now using electronic health record. For each candidate that goes through portfolio, there are almost 60 pages that the school is having to keep on each candidate, and of course they have to lock those up. So if you think about it, if the school has 10 candidates, you're looking at 600 pages for each year that they have to lock up, and over the years that could become very, very cumbersome. So I think that's one of the things that, every school unanimously said, please digitize the forms so that we can do electronic submission. One of the schools also brought up the fact that we probably should look into the requirements, the number of cases that are required. One of them brought up the PROS requirement in the portfolio at the current form. Now, this was started almost 10 years ago or so, or probably 10 years ago. We put in there quite a few cases for dentures and partials, and the schools are telling us now that they don't do that many, because many of them are going to implants. So by requiring the number of cases of dentures and partials, they're having a hard time meeting the requirements. So that's something we should look into, either to reduce the number of cases required for portfolio exam, or maybe even eliminating it completely. That was coming from the schools. So again, I think those are some of the things that we should think about. I'm not recommending that we do that, but I'm just saying, when we ask the schools brought these things up, I want to bring it to you so that you all know what the requests are coming from the schools. They are our partners, and I think we just need to hear them. Another school and actually some of the schools also asked whether or not there could be like an annual meeting of some sort, an annual calibration for their grading examiners, and that way all the grading examiners will be actually calibrated by the board and not by their own individual schools. Although the calibration criteria is there, they feel like if there's one meeting where they can bring everybody together, everybody will be calibrated at the same time, I think that would also be very helpful. Again, of course, that will require cost and all that, so that's something general board staff will have to look into. It was very interesting that one of the schools mentioned that because of the time it takes, and they estimated about 35 hours spent on every portfolio exam, and then there's no consequence when the candidate drops out of the portfolio. They have invested all these hours into it. One of the schools was actually talking about possibly charging the students. If they sign up for portfolio, they may start charging the students if they dropped out of the program. I thought that was quite interesting, but that's because of the time that the faculty has spent in that whole exam process. So again, it was very interesting. I think that all the schools were very, very appreciative that we came basically to listen to them. We didn't come to lecture, we didn't come to pressure the schools to get on the program. We were there basically to listen. And they were very appreciative of that. And they said that they hoped that the direct communication between them and the board would continue in the future. And they are on board with portfolio. They all think this is a great concept. They favor it. They just need help from us so that they can work with us, and move it forward. So again, thank you, Karen, for allowing the staff to take on this project. And thank you, the staff, for coming to these sites and also for putting together such a very detailed report.
Thank you both for that report, and Daniel, thank you too. Sounds to me like we need at least a subcommittee, if not a task force, to address this in some ongoing fashion. Dr. Lay, as exam committee chair, maybe you could get together with staff and figure out what it is you need, and then we could go ahead and continue that effort, because I think this is really good to get this on track. There's a few simple things we could do. Obviously, portability is a much larger question, but we should do at least what we can. So, if you need anything before January 1, I can help you. After that, you may have to talk to somebody else.
And I would just
If I
add,
can,
I would just add, as we're winding down this year and people are thinking about what committees to sign up for next year, that this would be tasked to the exam committee. I don't think that you'd actually need an additional task force or subcommittee. This would actually be a working activity for the examination committee. So I would hope that Dr. Lay and Dr. Morrow would volunteer to chair or serve on that committee, having the background, and would encourage other members also to be involved in the examination committee. We could possibly even discuss setting up a meeting if the deans of these schools go to CDA in May. Just plan a meeting with our board meeting and their availability going to CDA. That's an option. That probably would be the soonest option to be able to gather people together, but we can certainly start strategizing about that. I agree that, especially what's happening nationally, that California has been the leader. Now we've really got to take this and promote it and try to assist the schools. I was with Dr. Morrow before he was on the board as a representative from Loma Linda. I was an analyst working on this, and he's absolutely right in that the schools put this together. And the intent was that it would not be an extra layer to what they're doing, that it was set up so that it would be what they do, bless you, in the normal course of their educating their dentists. So we need to bring that back around and emphasize that and try to assist the schools as best we can.
Just wanted to mention that all of the faculty members that I talked with at these meetings and that I have spoken with over the time, and all the students that have gone through the portfolio examination process for licensure, they all agree that it is by far a superior process for assessing competency than the current regional patient-based examinations, where you only look at a small portion of that treatment rather than treatment over the full spectrum of examination, development of a treatment plan and accomplishment of that treatment, and then post-treatment observation and assessment. But it is cumbersome. Now, this is the first time that anybody has ever done this. Fortunately, wisely, we put most of this in regulations, not in code. So it is something that we have the ability to go in and adjust and make it more user-friendly than what it seems to be at this point. So.
Thank you. I'm going to now ask the board, we're about 10:45. Do we want to take a few minutes to check out a hotel and so on? Take about a 10-minute break if we could. Is that going to be enough for everybody? Okay, so we'll try to be back just to, maybe 5 minutes before 11 so we can resume with the Rep report.
I attended the dental examination review board in June of this year, and at the August dental board meeting, I reported some of the changes in the rep examination that will begin January 2018. And some of the changes include the requirement to, instead of doing 2 operative procedures, the candidates now can do 1. And if they pass that first one, they don't have to do the second one. There has been a lot of confusion, among the candidates from California schools that want to take the exam in order to apply for California licensure. So at this point, I think we have examiners. Yes. So we have Dr. Norm Magnuson and also Dr. Bruce Horn that are here. And I would like to ask them to come up to the microphones so maybe they could elaborate more on the changes and why the changes were made. And thank you for coming.
So do you want me to explain why we made the changes again? We talked about this in the August meeting, but I'll reiterate. So probably one of the biggest concerns of change for Rep over the last few years is the fact that, is the fact that we no longer require a candidate to do 2 operative procedures if on the first operative procedure, which is a class 2 restoration, if they pass that with what we score as a 3 or higher, because that's what we have as a passing grade. And the reason we made that decision was many, many years of psychometrics and the proof that 97.5% of the candidates who pass their first class 2 pass their second class 2. So if we are requiring them to do another class 2 that they're still going to pass, we're not learning anything new from them. The candidates aren't telling us anything new by doing 2 procedures. So what that's doing is requiring an extra patient, a longer exam, and we're learning nothing new from them. So we made the decision that if you get a 3 or higher on your first class 2 procedure, that you don't need to do any more.
I may just ask a question for administrative purposes. If they fail the first procedure and take the second one and pass?
No, they have to, they can't, so if they get less than a 3, it's not considered a failure yet, okay?
Okay,
So they get less than a 3, they do a second procedure, and then we average the scores just like we do now.
Okay.
And if they get above a 3 on both procedures, and they pass just like they do now.
okay.
So there's no change in the exam from that point of view.
Okay, because from the administrative point of view, when you send your results to the California board,
Right.
we would just need to know that they passed, so
That's
that
right.
you wouldn't indicate that they failed the first time.
No, and just like now, if they get a 2.9 on the first prep and they get a 3.6 on the second prep, which we found out that statistically doesn't happen all that often. I mean, it's a very small number that happens on. But then they get above an average of a 3 and they pass, and you've been told they pass.
So the procedures,
Hold on, go ahead.
so the procedures are precisely the same.
Yeah, our rubrics have not changed at all.
Okay.
The operative procedures are the same. They're required to do a Class 2 procedure as the first attempt. I might add that the first procedure does not lead to a second procedure if the candidate fails that by critical error. If the candidate leaves disease in the tooth, caries, validated by 2 independent examiners, or the candidate prepares the wrong tooth, or any of the other critical errors that have been in place for REB historically for years, the operative section has failed. There is not an immediate retake for the operative section at any time, and the candidate must go to another site and retake. The other thing I would add, Norm, is that if a candidate, and this doesn't happen too often, what I'm about to tell you, about 3% of the time, if a candidate scores below 3.00 and then challenges a second operative procedure like they do now, and we average or compensate those two, we have found statistically that candidate now must perform at a level greater than the amount that they weren't successful on the first procedure. In other words, if they score a 2.6, they have to really get near a 3.4 or 3.5 to have a compensating score that will end up with a passing grade that would equal what we report to you as 75%. We also determined with the one operative procedure that we wanted to lessen the impact for the schools as well. Not only do we not learn more about the candidate by having the 2.5% repeat a procedure, which actually could be a Class 2 or it could be a Class 3. They had that choice in their quiver as well, should they choose to. But we wanted to get down to the least amount of patient-based procedures that we could. There are simulations available that we continue to look at. They're not there yet in our mind as we review things with Moog and other vendors, but the least impact we can have on the schools, the students, use of patients, without redundancy that doesn't give us more information about the candidate results in the one operative procedure, and that's really maybe the primary rationale that we moved in that direction, but it was driven by the psychometrics and historic data that showed, again, that 97% of candidates are successful with the first restoration and are doing the second one because we're asking them to, thinking that we've learned more about them.
Could you also address the perio section? I understand at this point in time, REP does you list the perio as optional, and I think that has been very confusing also.
All right, so if you want to take the REB exam as a REB exam, it's not optional. You can opt out of it. There are a few states in the country that don't require perio. And so if you, as a candidate, say, I want to go to a state that doesn't require it, you can opt out and not take it. Most states still do require it. So we just have it as an opt-out, not as an opt-in. So if you sign up for the REB exam, you're going to take the perio. You'd have to check a box not to do that. So that's the only thing, the only reason we're making changes in those areas is that one of the big words that come out is portability. So, okay, what makes our exam more portable to more states? A candidate can take it and go to more states. The Perio was one of those options. We added the process section. Remember last time I told you about adding that to it? And the only reason we added that was for portability issues. So most of the REB states, in fact, all of the REB states that are members of REB don't require a process section. Because if you required a process section, you wouldn't be a member of REB at that point. But we still want to make portability a big issue. That's important, and we've added a process section to it.
So I understand because of the fact that it does say perio optional, which means candidate can opt in or opt out. We have been receiving a lot of calls from the students in California asking whether or not they still have to take the perio section.
And you tell them yes.
And we tell them yes. Yeah.
And,
Is it like on the website, do you have specific states or is it up to the candidates to decide?
Okay, we
which
have
one they
information
opt in,
on our
opt
website about which state accepts what. But we always tell the candidates it's your responsibility to gather information from whichever state you want a license in. A lot of these candidates want to make sure they can get multiple state licensure. First of all, a lot of them don't know where they're going to work. I think last time I told you how interesting it was as a floor examiner for an exam in May and talking to students and wanting to know where they're going to go, and they have no clue. They're going to graduate in a month and they have no clue where they're going to go. Well, if that's the case, when you take a licensure exam, you're going to want to make sure you increase your chances for portability for all the states that potentially you might move to. So exactly what we're doing. In some states that have not accepted REB yet, because traditionally they haven't, we are working and discussing with those states to accept us, because now we have whatever that state requires for licensure, we have incorporated that into our exam.
I might add as an example, so the state of Arizona does not require the periodontal section, initial phase, root plane and scale, evaluation, correct number of teeth, and so forth. So let's say a California student matriculating at one of your 6 schools takes the REB examination and looks carefully that they want to practice in the Phoenix area, and they look at the details of that, what's required for application, and they find that the periodontal section is not necessary. Well, to give that candidate an equal opportunity to apply to that school without challenging more of the exam than that state requires, and that's a states' rights issue, just like California. There's not more pathways to licensure, maybe Colorado you're equal to now, than the state of California. And that's how it is, and that's how it's going to be, and you'll probably add more, and you had conversations about your portfolio and the advancement or the clinical licensure exam, and things will change, absolutely. So, so when a candidate then applies to Arizona, that candidate is looking to see what do I need to practice there, and if it's not perio, and they take the perio section and they're not successful, which doesn't happen very often, it's about 1.5% of the time, then they can't apply with a failed section whether that state required that or not. The state board's not going to approve an application. That candidate then will have to retake the perio section to get a successful outcome so that they can successfully apply to a state that didn't require that to begin with. That's how confusing things are around the country. So a lot of the options that we've provided candidates are for mobility. It's not a prescription, if you will, for us to say to you, the Board of California, we think there's another assessment tool here you might use, speaking of PROS, okay? There's so many different ways that states are making choices about successful applications. We're really trying to pay attention to that. Arizona is a member state as well, so we have a need to service that state. And we don't forget as REB that we serve you. We provide independent assessment results that you look at as a pathway to licensure. We actually don't drive that issue as much as we reflect what it is that states want to do at our DERB meetings and other gatherings.
I have a question. So currently, how many states are accepting REB, and is that Canada as well?
No, Ken, it's 42 or 3?
I think it's 42. You know, a lot of times it's sort of catch of the day, whether it's Ono or Tuna. states kind of make decisions.
Do they change often?
Um, no, it doesn't. We're adding more than decreasing. Each time we do a presentation and mobility, portability, and a willingness to have a state accept all of the regional licensure exams, we're adding. Like recently, Arkansas joined as a member state to
Right.
REB, and you were responsible for that presentation.
And the reason they didn't accept us before for Arkansas is we didn't have a prosthetic section. So they actually accepted us first as we administer our exam, but then a candidate would have to take a pros section from one of the other exam agencies. Now we have incorporated the pros section into ours, so now they can take the REB exam and they can opt in and take a pass and get a license in Arkansas.
So there was a time not too long ago where state dental boards, without the resources or the I won't say interest, without the resources and the determination to pick through each and every acronym of an exam, accepted an examination such as REB. We accept REB and we're going to deal with other issues. Well, kind of what's happened now, since examining agencies are making changes and we're responding to not only as the IDEA, the use of patients, getting down to the minimum number of things that we need to do for states that require a clinical licensure exam that includes a patient, is, we're kind of, the state boards now are looking at the details of each of the examinations, and they're beginning to describe what they want in terms of section and content rather than acronym. And we kind of see that around the country. In your portfolio, you have a very detailed test specification as to the marks that need to occur. Well, some state boards now are looking at clinical licensure exams in that way too, and they're looking at what it is that we want, what it is that we don't need, or what it is that we don't consider an assessment tool that we need to use.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's, Dr. Moore.
Dr. Morrow.
Let's take a hypothetical. If I'm a student and I take the REB examination and I opt out of the perio section because I'm going to Arizona, then I decide to change my mind and I want to come to California. When we get the results from the REB examination in California, will it identify that student, that candidate opted out of the perio?
You won't get a result from a perio exam, because once they've taken it, we're going to tell you either they passed it or failed it.
Okay.
So if there's no response on a perio, then you have to, and I'm assuming we have to make an assumption, and I don't know if we actually tell them that they didn't take that part of the exam or not.
The application will be incomplete. You'll be looking at a candidate's application that they took the exam at Midwestern, let's say in Phoenix, and it will not have the periodontal section that you require. And you as a board will make a decision that either the application is incomplete, you may have another designation for that, and I'm certain there will be some correspondence with that candidate that essentially says there's a periodontal section that needs to be taken for a complete application, and they'll have to sign up to take the perio section at one of the California schools or somewhere else and successfully present that as an addendum to their application so that you can consider it. That's what I would think would occur. Does that make sense?
An understanding though, if our statute simply says that we accept the results of the REB examination, aren't we bound to that no matter what components were in that examination?
I would say that that's an unknown at this time because we have B&P Code Section 139 that requires all the examinations to undergo our psychometric evaluation. So since we're in the process of doing our occupational analysis of dentistry now, I'd say this is an issue the board is going to have to look at closely next year and as we're going through sunset review. Because as Dr. Magnuson said, we have specific procedures or areas outlined in portfolio, but we don't in REB. But I think that the stance that I'm taking on behalf of the board right now is that the last evaluation of REB was done for us in 2012. And so this will then be, after we do our occupational analysis, it will be time again for REB to be evaluated. And at that time, we'll see whether the exams are still psychometrically sound. And the board will also find out whether our portfolio pathway to licensure should be changed based on the occupational analysis. So we're asking that status quo remain, and the candidates who have taken REB this year will continue to take the sections moving forward. And somehow this ties into, California doesn't give specialty licensure. So if we've had somebody essentially who's been practicing in another state as, say, an orthodontist, they come to California and have a license to do anything.
Right.
So similarly, we'll have to see how this change in REBS examining how that will fit into our process here. And the board may have to take the idea, as was mentioned by Dr. Magnuson, that we identify what the elements of licensure are rather than a specific licensing, like a REB or an 8X or something similar to that.
You know, from a practical, functional standpoint, through our licensing by credential, California accepts the results of every licensing examination that's given.
Absolutely, at a 5-year mark.
Right, after 5-year mark.
Right.
Now, that's 5 years for us. Other states have a different temporal requirement
Right.
for that credentialing process. I think some
That's not
states are-
uncommon either. When I was in Arkansas, there must have been, I'm going to say, at least 10 candidates, doctors wanting to get licensed in Arkansas for a variety of reasons, and never once were they asked about their initial licensure exam. But I also know a friend who wanted to go to Arizona, and after 30 years of practice, he had to retake the REB. I mean, so every state's different, but credentialing is a whole different ball game than is initial licensure. So we're not talking baseball and baseball, we're talking baseball and soccer. You know, the whole, we can't really combine those two. They're two different, totally different issues. And you're going to come up with the same problems that many states right now come up with. What do they accept or don't accept? If a state accepts the 8X exam and the REB exam, and we require the perio, but theirs doesn't, then their state has to come up with the solution to what do we want to accept. So you're not unique in this situation. There are states that require a cast restoration. There are states that are considering requiring an amalgam restoration. There are states that require a class 3 restoration. Those are all issues that we as REB have to deal with when it comes to portability. As if we are an exam agency that wants to make our exam portable to as many states, to so-called make this one national exam thing that they keep talking about, we have to deal with those. And as a state board, and I was a state board member also, I know that these issues come up and we have to make decisions on it. So, you know, that's your job. And we work for you, and we'll do whatever we can to meet your needs to make sure that your initial licensure candidates have a minimal competency.
And so I would just summarize that this is clearly an issue that will be on the board's agenda for next year, to clarify these things as we go into sunset review, because that's our best opportunity to have changes to statute that are necessary. So we add all these things in.
Correct.
So you said earlier that there are candidates who have no idea where they're going to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that initial licensure can be flexible enough so that, say, in our case, a candidate decides later, after they pass, that they want to practice in California, to come back and do an addendum to do the perio?
They can sign up for a single section in our exam.
Is there any time limit on that?
No, all we require is that the state board give approval for that person to do that, which you would probably do if they've been practicing for a couple years. So, I mean, we'll use Arkansas as an example since I've talked to their board. They require a cross section. So if they took the exam, passed it, with everything but the pros, and then they wanted to go to Arkansas, and Arkansas says, well, you've only been practicing 2 years, so we need for you to take the pros section. Arkansas can give approval for that candidate to take the pros section from us and move to, or they can go to ADEX or credits or CERT or whatever exam they so desire to use.
But is the key that they have to be practicing?
No, the key is that if they're a student, they have to get approval from the school. So the dean has to qualify them to take our exam. They have to have met basic requirements from the school to take our exam. If I'm pretty sure I'm right on that, right?
Yeah,
if you're
and
a
then-
doctor,
Right, and then if you've already graduated and you
And
found that
that's the
you're short
question.
one section,
Right.
then there needs to be some rationale for that applicant to take that perio section. So what would happen is they would apply to your state, and you would find they're deficient in one area, whatever it is. You would communicate with Rev and say, you know, we got candidate Dr. Jones that needs to take the perio section, and we go, oh, okay, then they get a candidate number, they sign up, they get an ID number, and they're good to go. They pick the site where they want to take the section that they're deficient in. One other thing I was going to say, states, as Norm said, including Arkansas, states do things also differently. Let me give you an example that is a little bit concerning to me. The state of Alaska requires an amalgam to be done. We see very, very few amalgams done anymore in our clinical licensure exam. We're down to maybe 1%, 1.5%. They require an amalgam for initial licensure because of the native population that they treat there in the outlying areas. They want to have their applicants come to that state competent in the placement of alloy. Well, my goodness, if you decide a couple years later after being in California that you want to go to Alaska to practice, that state dental board is going to have to make some sense as to whether or not you fit the category of entry-level competency for alloy if you didn't demonstrate that on your clinical licensure exam. So states certainly have the right to do whatever they want to, and there's such a variety. These are one of the reasons we can't put on the website a menu for candidates to say, if you're going here, here's what you need, because this was a development of about 3 months ago.
yeah.
So, and it'd be impossible to update this website so frequently so that we wouldn't confuse candidates. So they still, as Dr. Magnuson said, they still need to
Contact
question
the
the state dental board and get specifically what it is, what's the recipe for success in your state? What do you require? And of course, getting back to breaking the acronyms down into what they contain.
Thank you. I'm thinking that this is sort of a new thing, the idea of piecemealing different parts of the exam. It raises a lot of questions about the time frame for completion and, things. And I think the exam committee needs to look at this, and this will be an item for board discussion going forward. But thanks for bringing that to our attention. I think hopefully we've answered some of the questions. I know we sent out some communication as to what candidates might need to do.
And when you go through that process, we're more than willing to help answer questions that we have expertise in too, rather than, we don't want to void when it comes to information. So if you have a subcommittee and you need to have something, I'm also wear the hat of the president of the American Association of Dental Boards. So I get to talk to quite a few board members across the country, and the whole issue is a pretty hot topic. With the ADA doing the OSCE, of course, and all those kind of issues. So, yeah, we have quite a bit of information. So when you make a decision, use the proper facts to do that, and we're willing to help.
Final question, if I can.
Sure.
Do you have a time limit as to your certification of the validity examination? In other words, if a candidate took your examination 10 years ago, wants to apply to us through our Rev portal, not through the credentialing portal, do you have a time limit as to where you certify validity of that exam?
Well, if they were coming to you 10 years downstream from having practiced, they would come in by credential, right?
No. Well, maybe they haven't practiced.
Okay, have not practiced.
Yeah,
at
I'm
all.
just saying, what is the time stamp that you put on your examination as carrying validity? Forever, or 2 years,
No,
5 years?
No, I think a state board's going to determine whether
No, that's an assumption.
So then you're asking me how long what's the expiration date of a rep examination?
Yes.
Right.
ADEX says theirs is good for 1 year.
Yeah, I think.
To be honest with you, we probably need to research that from our psychometricians. I mean, you're asking us a question that typically is not asked of us, so.
They have to complete the rep components within a year, or they have to redo that. Now, as far as how long that's good for, we'll have to return an answer to you on that.
Well, but I think that's an answer that's important for us to have. It might not be asked of you very often, but it is, I think, an important answer.
So I can answer that question from another board's perspective, because in Oregon, we had that issue come up a couple times in my tenure there, and our board decided that, and I think it was just a few years, I think 3 or 5 years at the most, that if you have not practiced, so let's say a dentist retired young, not in practice for 5 years, came back and wanted to get a license again, we decided at that point they had to retake an examination to prove their competence.
But that was the individual board's decision.
That's
I'm
right.
asking if you have
No,
a temporal
well,
limit.
I'm not sure we've ever had that question asked us, so we'll have to.
And Dr. Morrow, I don't know that that's the domain of an agency that provides an independent assessment to you. We can give an opinion on that based on a specific question, a specific candidate, what sections they took at the time, what you require now. There's lots of information there on a specific instance that would need to be needed together to get an answer. But we are the independent assessment, not so much the statute rule. You're going to have a lot of domain and say, if you will, as to what a candidate should come to you with a complete application. If they've been in limbo for 8 or 9 years with having passed the clinical licensure exam but no active practice, you may require a skills assessment. You may require 40 hours of remediation in something. I don't know. There's a reason why that candidate or that licensee has not practiced for a period of time. So there would be certainly some information gathered about that.
Yeah, I guess ask the question another way. How often do you do your psychometric evaluation of your exam?
Let me answer that.
Go for it.
It's every 5 years. And it may, in fact, coincide with your request from OPS and DCA to do the same. I don't know, or it may be off by a year or two. In fact, we have just finished, and of course, it's based on practice analysis. You've had Dr. Sharon Pop present to you, but we also use Tom Halladania. Tom Halladania is a very well-known psychometrician around the country. ADA, Department of Testing Services, Joint Commission uses that group as well for an independent assessment. And that has just been completed in May. We'd be happy to provide that to you.
Yeah, I just want to maybe give a different take to Dr. Moore's question. I think the exam is given to assess the competency of the candidate at that time. I'm not sure if there's really an expiration, because if I passed California board 34 years ago, I haven't had to take another board. Did California license, did that examination expire on my license? I'm not sure if that's the case. There's no expiration on national board exams either. So unless you're applying for specialist training or something like that, which they may require that it has to be within 5 years or whatever. So I'm not sure if that's a question that REP could answer. I think it's really up to the state boards to decide, when to require the candidates or the licensees to retake the exam. I mean, that would be my take on it.
I think that's true. If you asked me to take National Board Part 1 right now, I probably would be sweating to death. I don't think I could do it.
Okay, that's very interesting, giving us a lot to consider, and we'll be looking at things going forward. And thanks so much for coming and
Thank you.
answering our questions and being at pretty much
Anytime.
all of our meetings.
Yes, I will be.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you.
And Bruce, good to see you again. Okay, is there any public comment on REP? How about portfolio? Anybody want to speak to portfolio?
Mary McKeon with CDA. I just wanted to let the board know CDA definitely supports the portfolio. We've actually been convening meetings with the deans since its implementation, and we would be happy to help convene another meeting in Anaheim for CDA Presents as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving along, we're ready for the enforcement report. I'm just going to give him a minute here for a sidebar. We'll have Carlos Alvarez, our enforcement chief, on deck here in just a minute. Looks like it's going to be a busy year for exam committee. and it's in capable hands. It's interesting hearing the backdrop of what's going on nationally with, you know, this momentum toward a national exam of some kind. I mean, it seems like this all ought to come together in some way at some time, but it's been worked on ever since I started my career and has never come to any resolution. So well, I guess we can always hope. Okay.
Thank you very much, Carlos Alvarez, Enforcement Chief. Sorry, I just had to take a break to consult with Michael here. So, at the last board meeting, there was a request to show the process of the enforcement once we receive a complaint, and to show the different stages as the complaint goes through each unit. And so then I put a presentation together here for everybody. And also to show how long it takes for a complaint to be resolved. And also what I did is I kind of incorporated like our statistics and our performance measures in the slides. And the reason I did it is when we're looking at our statistics, performance measures, we're looking at numbers. So as I explain it, and hopefully at the end, I'll get the aha. Now I know what these numbers are. That's what I'm trying to achieve. And the other thing that I'm trying to achieve is at the end, when I finish, I just want everybody to start applauding, rush me, and carry me out. That's the other achievement that I want to accomplish. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I won't get into statistics to the performance measures because I'll talk about that in the presentation. And one thing is, I apologize because there is some frames, because I just consulted with Michael and I apologize. There are some frames I won't be able to show, but I'll be able to explain, and I apologize for that. And so, I don't know if that's gonna, I'm gonna do it now. Yes, if you could pass that out, please. And it's almost kind of like a 101 of what the process is in the enforcement program. So complaints made to the dental board by the consumers are received by telephone, by mail, email, or fax. And types of complaints that the dental board receives is unsafe, unsanitary conditions, quality of care, allegations of billing, insurance fraud, sexual misconduct, drug, alcohol violations, or any other type of unprofessional conduct as defined in the Business Professional Code of 1680. So now with the complaint and compliance unit, intake is responsible for entering the complaint into the breeze and creating a file. Now, Business and Professions Code of 129B, each board shall, upon receipt of any complaint respecting an individual licensed by the board, notify the complainant of the initial administrative action taken on his or her complaint within 10 days of the receipt. So we have 10 days to acknowledge the complaint and to mail out a letter to the complainant. And so therefore on the performance measures, when we look at our target dates of 10 days, that's what it's referring to, is that we are acknowledging this complaint. And so when you're looking at, okay, performance measures, target date is 10 days, we're doing an 8. So we're under the target date, so which is great. So the compliance intake again, pre-drafted acknowledgement letters is filled out and mailed to the complainant. 10 days start when the complaint date is stamped. So once we receive it, we date stamp it. The 10 days start there to meet with the 129 B of the Business and Professions Code. So the date and time of the acknowledgement letter is entered into Breeze. So we have something in Breeze to say, yes, we did send out this letter. So then the acknowledgement letter is scanned, as I talked about, and get into our Breeze system. And this is a letter that we sent out to the complainants. And I'll get into that. Just need my glasses in. I apologize. So it's already pre-drafted. So what the analysts do once it moves on, they address it to the complainant, and it's just formal. It's just advising the complainant that yes, we did receive your complaint, and it tells them that their concerns are going to be addressed, and we tell them about the process. The process is going to take several months to complete, and we're going to obtain all the pertinent information to their complaint, all their dental records, documentations, and that would be reviewed by a dental consultant to determine whether violations have occurred within the Dental Practice Act. And then they will be notified in writing to say, yes, whatever decisions is made, whether it continues on or it's closed, we're going to notify you. And that's what this letter does. And it gives the telephone number to the analyst, so in case they have any questions, they can call and track their own complaint. So the unit, complaint analysis unit. So what they're responsible for is to review and analyze any complaint to ensure the following. Is the consumer's complaint form contains complainant's information, subject's information, and a brief description of the complaint. Supplemental complaint information form contains contact information for any other subtreaters and authorization for release of records. That's the most important form that we need, is that signed authorization form, which gives us the authority to go into the dental office and retrieve these records in order for us to complete the investigation. So now, with the initial request for patient records, once that letter is drafted, it's mailed out to the subject and or subtreaters, and they have 15 days to respond back to us, and that's per 1684.1A A1 Business and Professions Code. And so one of the questions come is, how does the analyst know that there's a due date? Well, in our system, there's actually an alert system that we put a due date when those records are to be returned back to us, or once we're supposed to receive it. We have an alert, and that appears every time we sign on. That appears that there's an alert saying how many days it's already past due, and that's how we find out that it's past due. We send out a second notice, or we could just go straight to issuing a citation and give them another 15 days to return to get the records, or we go to a subpoena in order to get the records. So that's what we do here with the analyst. So once we receive those records, we'll give that to a dental consultant for review. But there is some cases where it won't go to an analyst. So priority cases such as self-hospitalization, billing, fraud, sexual misconduct, or any type of unprofessional conduct, that goes straight to investigations. It won't stay with an analyst. So the type of cases that stay with the analyst, again, is it'll go to the dental consultant. They'll make the recommendations, and typically they'll get assigned anywhere from 15 to 20 cases at a time for a dental consultant to review. And usually the turnaround is about 2 weeks, but if there's more subtreaters, depending on the type of allegations, it might take a little bit more than 2 weeks to get back. So once it gets back from the dental consultant, it's either closed because there was no violations, or it gets forwarded to investigations with the recommendations of the dental consultant. So that cases go to the manager, to the complaint compliance unit manager. She reviews everything, that yes, all the records are there, that yes, we do have a dental consultant report, and yes, they're recommended to go to investigations. Then they'll forward it to investigations to the manager there. And all that is entered in the Breeze tracking system. So one of the things I was going to show the Breeze tracking system, but like I said, there is where we put a start date and an end date. When that goes to an analyst, once they complete that job task, there's an end date, and that's how it gets tracked. When we start reporting our performance measures, case aging, case tracking, that's how we get the numbers because of Breeze. So the enforcement process now for the what we call the IAU unit, the Investigative Analysis Unit, they conduct investigations involving administrative violations of the Dental Practice Act, and they're responsible for cases that they investigate are quality of care, petition for reinstatement, malpractice notifications, criminal conviction cases, false misleading advertisements, and discipline by another state or agency. Sworn investigators, they handle all the criminal violations and administrative violations, and or. It could be either or we could have two. And so with the sworn investigators, same thing. Most important thing is that we have a signed authorization to release patient records. And the type of cases that they're assigned is insurance fraud, drug, alcohol, drug abuse while practicing, excessive prescribing, controlled substance, sexual misconduct, patient abandonment, practice of dentistry without a license, or any other violations of unprofessional conduct that is defined in 1680 of the Business and Profession Code. So IAU staff and sworn staff, what their jobs are basically they're fact finders. With all the records that we get, they go out and get all the facts. They interview complainants, witnesses, office staff, subjects involved in the investigation in order for us to give that or present that to a dental expert, district attorney's office, and or the attorney general's office. So that's all what we do, is we obtain further documentation or evidence to support the allegations. And the most critical part is that we write and complete an accurate investigative report. Let's document what our findings are. And once we have completed everything, then that goes to a dental expert. So a dental expert reviews it. Depending on the type of case, it could take a month or maybe anywhere from a month to 4 months, depending on the case that they have. They make the recommendations, and then we'll move that. So if there's violations of the Dental Practice Act, that'll go to the Attorney General's office. And sworn staff, we can form an opinion whether there's a violations of the penal code, of the penal code. We can make that assumption to say, yes, we have all the evidence. Yes, they've been conducting fraud. We'll make that opinion, and we'll get that to the district attorney's office. But at the same time, we'll send that to the Attorney General's office. Okay, and those are 2 slides that I couldn't present. But as far as time tracking, I apologize for that. So on the time tracking, because one of the questions is, how do you time it? So in the Breeze system, we could go in the performance measures and the statistics when they say, okay, case aging. How do you know when the case is aging? Because of that tracking system that we have in Breeze. So once our intake opens that file, it opens up an investigation tracking cycle time, and it starts there. So each time it moves to a different unit, there's an open date and there's a close date. So once the investigation is over, it'll go to an investigator. It starts with the first day. Let's say we received it today and the investigation ends next year, they say in February. So once that investigation is complete and it goes to an Attorney General's office, we close that on our end, and that's what shows in our performance measures. It'll post on that end, but once it goes to the Attorney General's office, that time tracking still stays on. So then on our performance measures, when it says case aging with the Attorney General's office, that's how we get it, is because it stays open, the cycle time stays open, we get all the recommendations, then it comes to you for board approval, and that's even tracked. When the mail votes are sent out, that's tracked. And once we get the final disposition on the case, let's just say revocation, they go on probation, we'll close it at that time. And that's what shows in our performance measures. And so far with the Attorney General's office, we have a target date of 520 days, and right now it's about 980 days. But that was something that we talked about with the Attorney General's office regarding staff. And that's how we track the time. And like I said, I apologize because I couldn't show those slides. And like I said, hopefully what I just showed, with the time tracking process it goes through to say, okay, now I kind of know why it takes so long to get. Because we go out there, and a lot of times you have to remember, we go out there and we get stalled by attorneys. We get stalled and they say, no, I don't feel like you're going to interview our client. We're going to wait 3-4 months. That's what stops it. And that's what keeps tracking the time there. Because sometimes we do come to a standstill. In most important cases, hospitalization, that takes time as well. And that would takes long as well. So there is sometimes a process where, yes, we're trying to be fast. We're trying to close it. But sometimes there is issues where it's out of our control. So does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Now that's when everybody applauds, carries me, and walks away.
Carlos, I
Yes.
want to thank you so much. This exceeds what I expected, and it takes the mystery out of something that I think that we've all struggled to understand for a long time. I'm a little disappointed about the time tracking because I think that that's the biggest burden for us, is to try to understand that part of it and to be able to see whether there's something in there that we can manipulate to make better. So I'm disappointed that so therefore I'm not going to carry you out of the room.
That's okay.
Next time.
Next time.
So Carlos, is it typically 900 days now?
It's 900 days once it's with the
It's
Attorney
like
General's
almost
office.
2.5 years, right?
Yes,
And
and that was something like I said when we met with Linda Schneider, and one of the things that came down to is what we all discussed and it comes up is staff, understaffed.
On their side.
On their end, yes. And there's, yeah. And so that's one of the reasons that it takes so long is that because they're understaffed, they're trying to hire more attorney generals in order to process this even
With
faster.
that, just my concern is these people are practicing while this is ongoing, and that bothers me immensely.
No, and I understand.
Yeah, to Carlos could comment on this. You can get a suspension order, but that I think you may have heard that's actually quite difficult to do and reserved for really egregious things. I mean, there is an avenue if you're really worried about somebody being out there, but it's not easy.
Yeah, public safety. A judge will issue a temporary order, public safety, if it's any type of sexual misconduct. Sometimes we go there with assurance fraud, and the way they look at it is like, well, the public's not really being harmed, and they don't issue it, unfortunately, in some cases. But so, like I said, they kind of tend to focus on patient harm. So our next topic here would be, one of the things when I said the statistics, one of the things is that we got 56 more complaints. The Dental Board has received 56 more complaints in the last quarter. And the percentage on the allegations that we're still receiving is negligence. We're still that's at 51%. And we entered that code, and that's because what the complainant writes in their complaints, that's negligence, so that's how we code it. And so so that percentage kind of drops down once it goes to a dental consultant, because once the dental consultant reviews everything, they can come back and say, no, there wasn't any type of negligence, there was no errors, and we close those cases out. But the only reason it's high, because that's what we're coding it, because that's what the complainant is complaining about. And that's why it's at 51%. I just wanted to bring that up before I kind of moved on. Now, the update regarding the Substance Abuse Awareness Committee mission statement and webpage. Well, I'm glad to announce that our substance abuse webpage has been posted, and there was some paperwork here that was left out for everybody.
Carlos, could we just go, I know you referred to, you were going to include an explanation
Yes.
of the statistics, which you did, but some of the board members may have questions about the statistics themselves. So
Sure.
maybe before we go into substance awareness, we could see if there's any questions on those items. So typically what we do each meeting is go over enforcement statistics and trends. This is just kind of a reporting out. The information there for you is, you know, it doesn't fluctuate a lot, but allows us to track things over time. And, you know, there's, you know, we get this every meeting, and so, you know, we probably don't need to go through it in great detail, but I would like Carlos to, if he could, to hit on any high points and.
Yeah, the high,
Yeah.
like I said, the high points was that when I reviewed it was the 56 complaints I received from last year, and the average, like again, the average stayed the same as from the last quarter, where negligence and incompetence was reported to the dental board.
Yeah, from what, I mean, the pie chart shows, and it's a trend that I've seen ever since I'm on the board, it's nearly always negligence and incompetence, or the vast majority.
Yes, and I guess we
yeah.
call this because that's what the complaints are. They're allegations, that's what they are, so we have to code it in, and that's why it's so high. But again, that drops down once it goes to a dental consultant or an expert.
Again, a couple of things jumped out at me. I know 15, 16, some of the numbers are down a little bit. It looks like, I know we had some staffing issues over the last couple of years with unfilled positions, but things are kind of picking back up, and it looks like 17, 18 is headed in the right direction. We still seem to be taking in more cases than we're closing, but I think that trend's been there for a while, and you know, it's always, there's kind of a bulge effect as cases move through and trends fluctuate, and so
Correct. As we get
yeah.
more, moves on, and again, and what happens is like I said, we're investigating. We start playing the catch up. Then that's when we have to start prioritizing our cases. But that's kind of maybe we get more. That means the investigators get more, and that's when we have to start prioritizing everything. But one of the things that I want to get to is, because Karen kind of mentioned it, that we're working on overtime. Because as you see, you know, we have some cases that are aging in the complaint compliance unit where it's kind of high, where it's at 255. But so what we did is we dedicated 2 days to catch up on these cases. And we also started doing overtime in order to start decreasing these numbers. And so hopefully by the next quarter, we're going to see these numbers down. So that's going to, hopefully when I come back, that'll be a highlight.
Well, as I recall from a prior report, we were really very understaffed in the intake unit.
Yes,
and that
and we're
really
fully staffed,
that had a big
and-
effect. Yeah,
And we're taking advantage of that we're
Mhm.
fully staffed. And we're also reaching out to other units to assist us in that.
I know that the AG's office was working on ramping up their staff. Has that happened yet? And if it has, are we seeing any significant difference in turnaround?
Well, we haven't been contacted by the Attorney General's office to say, yes, we have addressed it. We hired so many people. But as far as our performance measures, it's still showing that it's the same trend. But like I said, we haven't personally been contacted to say we have addressed this issue and this is what we did on our end. but we could certainly have a meeting with the Attorney General's office with making a phone call to say, has this been addressed? So we could have, so on the next follow-up meeting, I could say, yes, they have addressed it with so many hires.
Yeah, there's an interesting bar chart on PM4, that's under the performance measures. I don't have a page number here, but it's formal discipline cycle time, and you can see we were talking about the 928 days to close out an investigation. 523 is our time, 596 is AG time. So, you know, that's little more than half. And you know, they have their workload and we have ours, and it just takes a while.
I was going to invite Linda Schneider to it. She typically attends the board meeting when it's in San Diego. So I was going to extend an invitation to her for the February board meeting so that she can answer any questions, prepare a presentation. I think that there's room for improvement also on our end, as well as the AG's office. And they are now required to report their performance measures, as the department has been required to for a number of years. So, and she will, I'm sure, bring tighter statistics to the meeting if we ask her to do that, and that's what I will ask her to do.
Well, it's not really fair for us to use up all the time and then hand it off to AG and expect them to meet a deadline. So I think you're spot on with that, and I think we recognized that a couple of meetings ago.
I think that our management team is going to be focusing on the efficiency of the processes now, and doing an evaluation to determine whether we really do need more people or whether the processes need to be efficiently evaluated, or evaluated for efficiency, I guess. Whether there are other things we can be doing in-house to move things along more quickly. We have, over the last 5 years, been using more citations for quality of care issues to resolve. That's worked a bit, but we're going to be diving into that now to see how we can make our process more efficient. And if it indeed shows that we need to hire more people in certain units, then we'll put that into our sunset review report and see where it goes.
You know, for instance, one of the questions that I asked as Carlos was working on this was, what happens in those incremental steps? Do things go in a particular file and just sit until somebody reports back, or does the analyst work on a specific time frame? That, you know, if you don't hear something in a week, if you don't hear something in 2 weeks, that person initiates the contact back.
We have the alerts. What I was commenting when we were going over that with the analysts, that we have alerts on the dashboard, and that's how it appears. It shows as an alert, and it shows how many days are past due, and that's how analysts knows, like, okay, I need to go back to this case again. But we do have it.
You're right in that different analysts have different work habits, but the managers conduct what we call desk audits on a regular basis to check in with the employees, to see where they are, where their backlogs are, encourage them to move certain things along. So Carlos has instituted that. So management is involved with monitoring, but just sometimes the caseloads get so high that we then just ask for voluntary overtime for people to come in and see if we can move things along.
Any additional questions from board members? Any public comment on enforcement statistics and trends?
Now, this information is going to be detailed in our Sunset Review Report. So they're going to be asking for at least the last 3 to 5 years of statistics that will look much like what you're receiving in your packet on a quarterly basis. So when you get a chance, look through the statistics pretty closely and imagine what the legislature is going to say when they see some of these numbers. And you can start asking questions that we will be asked by the legislature. It's good if board members can point those things out and we can be ready to respond. So the statistics will be definitely part of the Sunset Review Report.
Okay, Substance Use Awareness Committee.
So I'll start again. So we have posted the webpage. So thank you, Dr. Stewart, committee. So we posted the webpage, and we posted our mission statement as well. And as you can see, I provided everybody what appears on the dental board website. There is a tab for prescription drug abuse. And so when you go into that tab, it'll take you to the link, and it gives us the prescription drug abuse mission statement, and it gives other links. So what we have here on the links is CDC report, California Pharmacy Board, Medical Board, FDA prescribing information, the American Dental Association, California Dental Association, and substance abuse counseling centers and locations. So that's what's posted on our website. So as we get more information, more links, we're going to be posting more as we go along. But like I said, we successfully, with Dr. Stewart and the committee, were able to post this.
Question. Carlos, how difficult or how easy is it to make changes to our website when we have something we want to update? What's the process there? Is it user friendly?
I don't do it. We have an IT person. We have David Sophia. So whatever we get, recommendations that we get, we'll forward it to him, and he's the one that uploads everything into the prescription drug abuse links. So he adds it.
Is he part of our staff?
Yes, he's part of our staff.
Okay, I know you've been waiting a long time to get this put up, so I hope you're happy now, Dr. Stewart. Okay, any other questions on our website? And there's a wealth of information out there. So much, it's almost overwhelming. And then, of course, there's tremendous national media attention on this with, the president's various activities in this area as well. Okay, moving along then. Any public comment on that item? Okay, seeing none, let's go to diversion program report and statistics. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we miss something? Statewide opioid safety work group meeting. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead there.
So our last meeting was on October 25th, this year, 2017. And so what the committee started establishing now is policy. So we're going over policy framework in order to educate and assist in decision making. And so with the policy, it's broken down into 4 categories, and within those categories, there are topics. Okay. So in those categories, we have prevent, manage, treat, and stop. And so within those categories, there are topics. So with prevent, there would be public education, provider education, and storage and disposal information. Manage, prescribing and dispensing, access to alternative pain treatments, and the use of data to support decision making. And prevention and evaluation as a cure system. To treat, promote access to treatment, medication treatment, stop overdose deaths, and that topics would be community response, opiate safety coalitions that have been formed. And so that's what the committee, SOS committee, has been working on. And also the FDA, they have established a new opiate policy steering committee. So the committee was established to explore and develop additional tools or strategies for the FDA to use to confront the opiate crisis. So currently the FDA is seeking suggestions from interested parties, so patients, patient representatives, healthcare professionals, academic institutions, and or regulated industries. So they are seeking comments in 3 areas. So what they're seeking is what more can or should the FDA do to ensure that all full range of available information is considered when making opiate-related regulation decisions? What steps can or should FDA take with respects to dispensing and packaging to facilitate consistencies of and promote appropriate prescribing practice? And should the FDA require some form of mandatory education for healthcare professionals who prescribe opiate drug products? So anyone who wants to provide any type of feedback can do so by emailing regulations.gov. So that's one thing. They're new and they're trying to get more information, and they want to concentrate on these 3 areas. The other thing that we covered as we're coming towards the end of the year, it was basically we sat there and reviewed what has California done, what approach have Californians taken to address the epidemic. And so one of the things that came up was forming the statewide opiate safety work group. And as we did also here with the dental board, we formed a committee. And the state of California has been promoting safe prescribing policies and practices. They've been conducting public education campaigns, translating data into actionable information. They increased drug intake back services. And also through legislation, we have funds and grants. So for instance, California Department of Public Health was awarded a grant, and that was to create a comprehensive California prescription drug overdose prevention initiative. And also the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration awarded a grant to the California Department of Health Services to support 8 local counties through education, outreach, and prevention activities. So California has really stepped up to address the epidemic crisis that we have. Then at the end, it was just a reminder of next week, November 8th and 9th in San Diego, that there would be a California Opiate Policy Summit. And that's what we covered in our meeting.
Okay, let's go back to diversion program report here. Sorry about that. I had you move ahead.
That's okay. So so now we have our diversion statistics, and that's for the quarter ending September 30th of 2017. And so pretty much for July, August, September, active participants, we've been having 17. So nothing has been changed. Just in August, there's 1 probation referral. And then closed cases, there was 1 in July and 2 in September, and we're at 17. So currently the DEC is recruiting public members for the positions here in Northern California. 2 dental positions in Southern California, 1 physician, 1 psychologist position in Southern California, and a dental auxiliary position in both Northern and Southern California. And so for the next DEC meeting, that is scheduled for December 17th in Southern California.
Seems like the numbers are declining.
Yes.
Of participants, yeah.
And that's because we take an active approach, again, when we're dealing with alcohol, drug abuse. We give them the diversion pamphlets. We mail out diversion pamphlets, so I think that's what's working here.
Thank you. Okay, 16C, cures registration.
Cures. So one thing, again, cures was another big topic because currently for Drug Enforcement Administration, we have 24,633 California dentists who are licensed to prescribe. And unfortunately, our numbers are low. So for the cures registration, we're showing as October, we're showing 8,000 registered dentists who have registered for cures. And so one of the things is I need to pass this out. I reached out to the Department of Justice, and I was able to get brochures that we have now that we will be passing out. So I obtained 1,000 brochures in order to address this issue. So that'd be part of our process, and I put some in the back here for the public. And so when we go out to do investigations, any type of investigations, we're going to be passing this out. So that's in order for us to address this issue, in order to get more people to comply with the cures. The other thing is that we had a discussion is how do we address this issue, and it was reaching out to CDA to form a partnership. And I'd like to invite Mary McCune from CDA to address this, the partnership that we want to establish with CDA in order to approve cures and registration.
So just like the dental board, CDA is very committed to fighting the opioid epidemic, especially in California. One of the things that we'd like to do is a twofold targeted communication approach to dental licensees who have DEA numbers. Firstly, we'd like to reach out to dentists with DEA numbers who have actually registered for cures to ask them through a survey what their experience was like registering for cures and what their current practices are using the database. The second survey we'd like to conduct is reaching out with partnership of the dental board to dentists who have DEA numbers who have not registered for cures, asking the reasons why, anything preventing them from doing so, and also educating them on how to obtain compliance in registering. So hopefully with agreement with the board, we'd like to work together with dental board staff on completing that type of survey.
It's interesting looking at the statistics, being the kind of practice that I have. I tend to write a lot of controlled substance prescriptions. Not as many as we used to, though. It's really interesting. Definitely a change in our practice. But I've heard some dentists mention that they got the DEA registration because they thought they might need it. They have an occasional patient that needs it. It's quite expensive to maintain. It's over $700 per location. If you have multiple locations, you're supposed to have a DEA for each location. So I just wonder if all the people that have DEAs really need them, and maybe they have it and they're just not really using it, and so the requirement for registration has not really come to their attention yet. I know those of us that use it are in our type of practice are very aware of cures, and I have all my office staff as delegates so they can do the query for me, and there's a way of setting it up. It takes a little getting used to, but I think the biggest headache with it is that your passwords expire and have to be renewed every so often. But if you're in it all the time, you just have your password book and kind of keep working through it and adding to it. But I think it'd be really great if we did some outreach and kind of got those numbers a little closer together, so the number of people with DEAs at least came close to matching those who had registered. It just doesn't speak well. So I think that's a really important thing to do.
Bruce, if I may.
Yeah, Tom.
Just a shout out to CDA in terms of the course that you give at the major courses with Dr. Park and Bundy. I think that's been one of the most successful and proactive things to come down the pike in terms of this issue. And those guys do a fabulous job. I would encourage the board members, if you get to a major meeting and are able to hear those two gentlemen, the course that they put on is fabulous. And it's interesting being in that room and hearing some of the comments from our dental colleagues. There's just a real important need for that kind of a course to keep going. So I hope CDA is continuing that.
We do, thank you.
I got one addition. I actually registered for cures at a CDA meeting, and I didn't know that I could register there. And went to CDA services, member services, and I was told that. So maybe something can be put in the newsletter that they can register there quickly.
Yeah, I'll take that back with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, they do seem to have become more responsive. I know I had some password issues, and they were back to me within a couple of days. It wasn't bad, and they were pretty sensitive, and they kind of helped me resolve the issue. It wasn't like I had to wait another 2 days to fix the thing. So their level of service, it's still got a little way to go, but it's kind of it's in line with what you come to expect with those kind of services that you get over the internet. Any public comment? Any additional comment on this?
I'll just throw in there that we don't have a way of matching up who has a DEA license and who doesn't. So the essentially the survey would need to be done to all licensees in California, emphasizing that this essentially applies to those who do have a DEA license, and in essence, if they're not registered for cures, regardless of how often they use it, that they're in violation of statute. We want people to be aware of that, because it is likely that it'll become part of our investigative process in the event that a case is open for another reason and we go down the list of things, that we may be looking at. So it is very important that at least the first step be completed. The second step, as in terms of checking cures before the prescriptions are written, hasn't formally been implemented yet because DOJ is having a difficult time getting the staff to be able to support that. But the first part of this requirement is on the books, and it's imperative that we get the word out to all licensees who have a DEA license without knowing who they are, that if they're not registered, that they're in violation of the state statute.
Okay, thank you to you both. Appreciate it. Thanks, Carlos. Okay, moving on, item number 17, anesthesia. And we could have an update on our anesthesia conscious sedation evaluation statistics. Oh, Sarah's going to take. I see we have Jessica Olney, who is the analyst in charge of that unit. Maybe Jessica's tied to her desk scheduling office anesthesia evaluations most of the time, so we're lucky to have her here.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, let me flip to my pages.
Jessica prefers to be behind the scenes, so she's giving us the evil eye right now.
I really
because
do.
She's here.
I like to stay in the back and hide.
She hides in the back.
Presented to you are the statistics for the general anesthesia, conscious sedation, and medical general anesthesia permits. These statistics go back to September of 2006. Typically what we do is we'll update a few months ahead, so that the dates for September and October are tentative. Some of these haven't happened or we haven't received the results of those, so we'll update those for the next board meeting. But typically we'll give you an idea of how many evaluations are coming up, how many we're scheduling. I don't want to go through each one of the numbers, but if anyone has any questions.
I think the numbers look really good. This is something I follow, as you know, and the one area that we've had trouble with for a number of years is the physician anesthesiologists who hold dental board issued permits. And if anybody hasn't heard me discuss this before, the problem is those are among the most difficult to schedule because they're at multiple locations. They're a lot of times they don't fully understand the requirement to have the evaluation. Also, it requires one evaluator who has both a medical and dental degree who's a permit holder. So there's a lot of constraints on conducting those. It's not a large number of permit holders. So, but other than that, the numbers are looking really good. And so I'm very pleased. I know we have trouble with the evaluator pool. There's always a shortage of evaluators, particularly in more remote areas. And that's been an ongoing challenge.
I'm noticing a trend. Our evaluator pool is aging.
Right.
A lot of our evaluators are retiring. Maybe they don't want to do it anymore. Some of them do volunteer and do several a month. Typically, an evaluator will do 1 or 2 evaluations a year. So although we have a large number of evaluators, it's hard for them to get away from their office. There's about 8 people involved with one evaluation. So trying to get that many people on board on one day at one time is difficult.
Yeah, I've had some thoughts about how we could simplify the program and yet keep the most important elements of it. And, you know, I don't know when the opportunity would come to really look at that, but, you know, it's interesting because if you compare our program to the one run by Institute of Medical Quality that evaluates medical facilities and accredits them, they have an accreditation process. They have 5 accreditation agencies. They have a very different process. We cover, I think, a lot more locations than they do, and with fewer people.
Yes.
And they have an entire staff just dedicated to that. They have a lot of resources. And if you think $2,000 every 6 years is bad, you should try office accreditation. It starts at about $6,000 to $8,000 for your first visit, and then it's every 3 years, probably $2,000 or $3,000. So it's a significant increase in cost for not as comprehensive a service. So I think we do a really good job. The question is, can we sustain it? Because victim has kind of become the program has become a victim of its own success in that we have expanding numbers, the state's gotten bigger, we're not necessarily keeping up with the evaluator pool.
No, it's very difficult to recruit new evaluators. I always put the buzz in their ear when I'm on the phone with them. Even some of our evaluators would try to recruit their colleagues, but it is difficult. It's hard to get away, especially when you're a new dentist with a new practice. Maybe you can't close your office for half a day or 2/3 of the day.
Maybe it has something to do with those millennials again. I don't know.
Yes.
Can you elaborate some on why 8 evaluators are needed?
Excuse me, not 8 evaluators, but 8 people in general. You have the permit holder who's being tested, the patient, you have 2 to 3 support staff, plus the 2 evaluators. So you could spend 2 months scheduling an evaluation and the morning of someone get in a car accident or a patient decide not to show up. And that starts the ball rolling all over again. You have to start from scratch. So there's the potential to have these canceled very easily.
So the permit holder, 2 to 3 support staff.
The patient.
Okay.
And the 2 evaluators.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jessica.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving along. I think Allison was going to take the update on anesthesia-related legislation.
Yes, Allison Vermontes, Legislative and Regulatory Analyst for the board. So throughout 2017, the board followed 3 anesthesia-related legislation. I have contacted both Assembly member and Senator's offices, and they've confirmed that the following bills are designated as 2-year bills and will be taken up again by the legislator in 2018. And those bills are Assembly Bill 224, Senate Bill 392, and Senate Bill 501. That's all I have.
If I could just comment, there were amendments pending that had not gotten into print yet.
Correct.
So maybe you and Fran could both help me through how this is going to unfold next year. From what I understand, 2-year bills, they start in an odd number year, end in an even numbered year. So we're in the 2nd year. And then procedurally, when they resume, do they pick up where they left off in committee? Do they start the process all over again? Or I'm assuming there's some discretion on the chairs how that gets handled.
It just depends. It just depends. They've got the shell, and so they could come in with a whole set of amendments that significantly changes, but keeps it within the framework of whatever the code section is. So it just depends.
I mean, I'm just wondering how it will work in terms of the timing of our meetings and possibly taking positions on these bills. I mean,
The legislature works on its schedule.
yeah, okay, that's kind of what I thought. Okay, that's a good answer. Right. Okay, any board member questions on anesthesia legislation? Okay. Any public comment on this item?
Good afternoon. Is this on? Good afternoon, board members. My name is Jenna Scarborough. For those of you who don't know me, this is my first board meeting. I'm a member of the Center for Public Interest Law at the University of San Diego. If you're unfamiliar, essentially they monitor state boards throughout the year. So I'm an intern for this year and I am monitoring the Dental Board of California. So it's very nice to come to my first meeting. I just wanted to inform you that one of the topics that we're very interested in the interest of public safety this year is all of the anesthesia legislation that's going through the legislature currently, and as well as the Caleb's Law that has already been passed. And it is our hope that the board continues to make that a priority in Caleb's Law that has already been passed, and hope that the statistics, and I know that's kind of a lengthy process and you're still trying to hire an analyst, but we hope that that continues to be a priority and that that can get taken care of fairly quickly, because this is very important for public safety, and this is a topic that I'll be following, as well as these 2-year bills throughout this upcoming year.
Do you have any specific questions for us on that, since you're new to the issue?
No, not specifically. I've already started to do some research on it, and I'm fairly familiar with what these bills are doing. So just I'd like to see how it unfolds, and if I have any questions as it unfolds, I'll be sure to ask you during any future meetings I'll be attending.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll move along to number 19, election of dental board officers. Oh, I'm sorry, LCP permits committee report on closed session. Sorry, skipped over. Dr. Lai.
Okay. LCP committee met in closed session yesterday. All committee members were present to consider applications for reissuance of a canceled license. The following applicants met all the requirements for relicensure, starting with Dentist MA. I'm going to group these all together because it all was pretty close. We were thoroughly vetted and we went over each one, and there were Dentist MA, Dentist BB, Dentist SL, Dentist DM. We all decided they would be granted relicensure in the condition that they all pass successfully California dentistry law and ethics examination. There were 3 dental assistants, and all were currently working in the field or have worked in the field for a long time. Registered dental assistant JB, assistant dental assistant RDA JB, dental assistant CE, dental assistant PM. We all concluded that they would not need to take the RDA written, but would need to take RDA law and ethics. And so I'm asking the full board to grant our request for approval of this. And Mr. President, that concludes our report. So should we take a roll call, please?
Second.
I'll second.
I sure will.
Roll call. Burden?
Yes.
Chan?
Yes.
Chappell Ingram? Forsythe?
Yes.
Lay.
Yes.
Lai.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Medina. Morrow.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Witcher. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes that item. Moving on to election of officers. I think Michael's going to handle that.
Okay, well, in the interest of time, if Michael's not going to move it, I will. So we have, let's take the secretary position first. And is there a nomination for a candidate for the secretary position?
Yes, I nominate Yvette Chappelle Ingram.
Okay. Ms. Chappelle Ingram, do you accept the nomination? Are there any additional nominations from the floor? Seeing none, do we vote, Michael? Okay, let's vote. We're voting on Yvette Chappelle Ingram as secretary of the board.
Am I supposed to record this too?
Yeah, you gotta record it.
Okay.
If you want the job again, you
Yes.
gotta record it.
I learned from you. Okay. For secretary, I'm calling the row. Burton.
Yes.
Chan.
Yes.
Forsythe.
Yes.
Lai.
Yes.
Lay. McKenzie.
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Medina.
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations, you are the secretary of the Dental Board of California for 2018.
Okay.
The next position we're going to be accepting nominations for is vice president. Is there a nomination for a candidate for vice president? Yvette?
I nominate Fran Burton.
Ms. Burton, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Are there any additional nominations? Seeing none, let's call for the vote.
Okay.
Dr. Morrow.
Burton.
Yes.
Chan.
Yes.
Forsythe.
Yes.
Lai.
Yes.
Lay. McKenzie.
Yes.
Medina. Morrow.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Witcher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations, Ms. Burton. You are now the Vice President of the Dental Board for 2018. Okay, last but certainly not least is the position of President. Dr. Chan?
Nominate Thomas Stewart.
Dr. Stewart, will you accept the nomination? Yes. Are you sure? Do you want to take a minute? Okay, are there any additional nominations for the position of President? Seeing none?
Roll call. Burton.
Yes.
Chan.
Yes.
Chappelle Ingram, yes. Forsythe.
Yes.
Lai.
Yes.
Lay.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Medina.
Yes.
Morrow.
Yes.
Stewart. Witcher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations, Dr. Stewart. You are the President for 2018. Just as a reminder, all elected officers take their positions effective January 1st. So the current officers will remain in office until December 31st.
Thank you. Very, very nicely done. And congratulations to everybody. I'll be glad to be off the executive committee once again. Is it congratulations or condolences? Okay, next item, public comment for items not on the agenda.
Mary McCune, CDA. So, I wanted to let the board know that on behalf of CDA and HED, we've submitted a couple of questions regarding the international dental programs and the statistics regarding how many people have graduated and have been licensed in California. We've submitted these questions to dental board staff and hopes to have it agendized at a future meeting.
Thank you.
I hope I'm not out of order. My name is Susan McLaren and I'm a hygienist in the state of California. I was not here yesterday afternoon and wanted to comment. I was going to comment after the DHCC report, but public comment was not called for, so I'm hoping this is the right place. I wanted to comment on yesterday's item 5D, the update on the regulatory package regarding the mobile dental clinic portable unit registration. Is that appropriate? Is it appropriate for me to comment?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Just
I'm looking.
Excuse me, just as a reminder, Michael.
Yeah, while we're accepting your public comment, the board won't be able to discuss
I understand that.
the contents.
Thank you.
We're in receipt of your letter regarding the mobile clinic regulation.
Right, it wasn't my letter, but yes.
I mean, from your association.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. I am looking forward to the reintroduction of the proposed rulemaking language for the mobile and dental portable units, and I will assume that you'll bring that up at the next meeting. I'm particularly interested in the regulation for large corporate entities, especially in light of the Denti-Cal provider outreach and utilization plan as it becomes implemented. The plan has heavy emphasis on alternative modalities such as mobile dental vans as one of their activities to achieve measurable objectives. These corporate entities have been providing these services in a manner too long without any oversight, so I'm looking forward to that oversight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, members, Richard Polanco representing the State University of Moldova. We want to thank you. I was instructed to be here to acknowledge and extend a great sense of gratitude from the university and the faculty, both to Karen and special gratitude to Dr. Morrow, who hosted a very thorough tour of the university and the dental program. And so I'm here today to, we're at the last end. We're very excited about the possibility of ultimately addressing the last deficiency issue. And we would ask that we have an early Christmas if it meets all the standards. On behalf of the university, I want to thank you all, especially Dr. Morrow and the site staff. We appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, board member comments for items not on the agenda. And again, we can't discuss this. This is for items coming up. Fran?
We had a robust discussion yesterday about dental assisting. And one of my takeaways was a need to look at whether there's any uniformity or not in the course requirements given by the various schools. And I think that what I was hearing was that there was enough of a disparity that there is an issue there. I don't know exactly how to proceed on this, but I'd be very interested in having staff do some investigation on what the course requirements are, and you know, with the hope of coming to some point of uniformity.
Thank you. That did come out of our committee report. That was one of the items the subcommittee looked at and asked OPES about and asked the programs about. So it's, you know, it's a very good question, and I would like to know as well. I have one item. We'll be getting a letter, I think it's from the American Association of Orthodontists, and also Dr. Chan brought this up, that you know, we should take a look at mail order orthodontics. There's a lot of concern that dentists are not overseeing this. Patients are being mailed instructions how to take impressions at home. You know, there's jurisdictional questions, you know, where is the dentist overseeing this? In which state are they practicing if they're mailing stuff across state lines? Anyway, it's a complicated issue and one we've been aware of for some time. And I would just ask that we be aware that that will be coming our way and find an appropriate place for it on a future agenda. Okay, if there's no other comments, I guess we can call for adjournment. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.